rights attorney, educator, author, Rondo, Minnesota's own Dr. Artika Tyner is the guest on my upcoming episode of Real Reading Talk. This is an episode that you do not want to miss. Stay tuned. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Real Reading Talk. And I am your most gracious host, Miss Sasha. And with Real Reading Talk, I discuss the real systemic issues that are at the very core, the very foundation as to why we have these high levels of illiteracy in the Black community and the ways in which we can combat these issues together, y'all. So, of course, once again, I have a phenomenal guest on my show, you guys. She is a phenomenal author, educator, and I am going to let her do the rest in giving us some background on who she is. Dr. Tyner, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. Honored to be here and to share about my passion for literacy.
Yes, definitely. Oh, wow. So, of course, what I always tell my guests, what I love to do is I always like to start off with your background. So can you tell us, about yourself, where you grew up, born, all of that good stuff about you?
Yes, I was born here in the Rondo community where I still live today. My family migrated north. I'm the fifth generation being here in Rondo. And what Rondo really meant was a solid foundation of not just migrating north, but the possibility and hope for the future. We were our own Black Wall Street. And I say work because at the peak of our community's growth and development, there is something that happened. And that's 1956. You have the Federal Interstate Highway Act. That meant that I-94 went through the heart of our community, truly displacing most of our community members. At its peak, we had over 700 Black-owned homes, nearly 400 Black-owned businesses. Today, we have less than a dozen Black-owned businesses in our district and very few Black-owned homes. So why do I start there? Because many people will say, well, Rondo was. But I believe in the hope and the faith for the future Rondo is. So I'm anchored in that history and in that legacy, and that's what inspired me to become who I am today. I'm a civil rights attorney by training, a leadership scholar, so I also earned my doctorate, and I study how leadership can impact social change and help to strengthen communities. But when I really think about who I am, I'm Rondo strong. So for me, that means that I'm rooted in a history, I'm rooted in culture, I'm rooted in faith and hope for the future. So Rondo's my story. Rondo inspired every aspect of my life, of who I am and the work that I do today.
Oh, wow. Well, let me tell you something. You just gave me a history lesson because I did not know about Rondo. Can you just give us about, a little breakdown as far as where is Rondo, where's that located, and just give us a little bit more history on that. This is great.
Yes. Rondo is located in the capital district of Minnesota in St. Paul. So literally from our homes, we can see our Capitol building. And when I think about Rondo, most people don't know our name, but literally there's a Rondo in every community associated with African Americans because there was a conscious choice around displacement to move the highway system through the hearts of communities. Oftentimes when I travel, which I do to share my research or to do an author talk, or a lecture at a university, I can tell what a Black community is almost immediately. And I know the direct displacement strategy and patterns because there are over 1,000 documented cases now of racial removal as it relates to the highway and freeway systems. Now, this is not to say I don't believe in progress, that we didn't need freeways or interstates to help to support commerce, to build other opportunities. That's not what I'm saying. What I am saying is there's something wrong, though, when you say the path of least resistance, the path where you would not need to engage with the community was through the heart of Black communities. And there is something wrong when you don't bring healing and restoration to those communities that were literally destroyed. Our community at its peak, you have wealth, you have power, you have solidarity, you have this piece of cooperative economics that was destroyed. So there is a challenge then on how do you repair the harm. So I'm a part of a reparative justice movement across the United States that helps not only identify these places where highways impacted their future, but also to help bring restoration. And I will say it loud and clear and never change from this position that you can't cash an apology. Many of the cities and municipalities have apologized at this point, but we need total restoration of what was lost related to our homes, related to our businesses, and related to how that impacted the possibilities of the future.
You, I mean, everything you said, and then some is definitely, this is what we need to be talking about unapologetically. And I love the way that you articulated everything, in terms of it has to be more than just lip service. It has to be action oriented. And I'm so glad that you are on my podcast, Real Reading Talk, again, because everything that you're talking about is related and connected to literacy, because of the fact, in order for us to be able to thrive as a community, we have to be a literate community. We have to be a community who is educated, a community who is very well read, and a lot of different things. It's like you just talked about, even when you said the Rondo community, I'm like, huh? And I'm lightweight embarrassed, but I'm like, hey, you know what? And I'm like, listen, this is real reading talk. This is something that I don't know, and I'm quite sure a lot of my listeners are like feeling the same way, like, wow, I never heard of that either. Of course, we hear the term Black Wall Street. That's pretty, becoming more now of a household name. But however, the way you explained it in terms of in Minnesota and, even the Highway Act, all of those different things, this is why it's so important for us to have literacy as the foundation, in our communities. And so what I want to ask you is, let's take it back into your family upbringing. So how, what type of literacy culture was created in your families?
Immediately, the first literacy culture that was built was in my grandmother's living room. My grandmother would, do spelling bee, pop quiz, vocabulary words. She was on the business of literacy each and every day. And when I think about what that meant for me, that meant that literacy was a part of our day-to-day life, part of our family culture. I was just looking at some pictures last night. My grandmother had this big stand in the middle of the living room where she kept her Bible. And literally, you were ready for Sunday school. You were ready for whatever the world had to present because you're reading that Bible and them hymnal books. Those were no negotiation on those things. So I would say my grandmother laid a solid foundation because she showed and demonstrated literacy, reading, and culture together in meaningful ways. In addition to that, my mother was an educator. So of course she expected nothing less than the best when it came to education and academics. Our Rondo community, you could go to the neighbor's house, and that was like going to a museum because of all the books, resource, knowledge they had. Our music academy, Walker West Music Academy, where we all went on Saturdays for our music lessons, whether it was piano, drums, vocals, saxophone, whatever it was. We also had to build other literacy skills to be able to read our sheet music and to be able to prepare ourselves with our musical talent and capabilities as well. So one of the things that I would say, learning, literacy, knowledge, creation, and building was around us constantly. So when I think about what shaped who I am, it was naturally a part of our neighborhood in Rondo. It was a part of our culture in our homes. And it was a part of something that was also a currency. I mean, literally, people were asking, what were you reading? What are you learning? What are you learning in school? And those things versus just a casual, hi, how are you? And not seeing children, not engaging with them. They engage with us. And our success was their success. So I would say it was the culture of literacy and reading, starting in the home. But I also believe that the home is a part of community. So the expanded home of community helped to raise me, helped to nurture me, and helped to create who I am today as Dr. Tyner.
Mm, that right there, everything that you articulated, that is my intention. That's what the reason why I have Real Reading Talk, the reason why I created, started rather, our nonprofit organization, ABC.read, is because I want to bring back that culture of literacy. Everything that you just said, this is exactly what I would love to see us get back. So now let me ask you, what happened? What did you see happen to our communities where we started to move away from that engagement, that connecting with the children, asking them questions like that, like, what do you read? What happened?
I mean, I only can speak from my own experience.
Mm-hmm.
Things change with the war on drugs. I think sometimes we don't like to look at what truly happened in our community. All of a sudden, that currency of family, knowledge creation, faith, community was replaced with violence, despondency, and despair. I mean, I'm not going to deny that. And that shaped my personal upbringing because all of a sudden you have, you're living as a child, and that's why I'm even more proficient in reading. My mother kept us in the house. You couldn't play outside anymore. The streets didn't belong to us. The streets belonged to chaos. So when I look at that's just an anchor in my own personal history, I'm not going to ignore and forget the ramifications. Now, did that mean I became a more proficient reader? Of course, I was in the house surrounded by books, but it also meant I was blessed with the structure of the family. And 15,000 children in Minnesota have a parent who is incarcerated. During the war on drugs, those numbers were even higher. For my own personal family, that's 70 years of incarceration. Our aunts, our uncles, our mothers, and our fathers entered those prison gates and came back home with the permanent scarlet letter that read F for felon. We have to talk about these things, and we have to talk about how that impacted the family structure. It did not impact me directly, but it impacted me indirectly because our community changed. And when you have that type of dramatic change in the social fabric, in the economic fabric, it means we need a different plan of action. And I do believe that's impacted literacy. I meet young people that aren't even sure they'll make it another day. Their parents, through no fault of their own, are not engaged, are not present at all. So when we think about that and where we are today, it's a call to action to repair our social fabric. Now, let me give you an example. In Swahili, we say Harambe, which translates into let's pull together or how are the children? Let's look at the latter. How are the children? If we ask ourselves that question, where I sit today, less than 25% of the third graders in my community that look like you and I are proficient in reading. Less than 10% are proficient in STEM. Yet we know STEM careers are growing faster than all careers combined by nearly 3 times. That tells me that there are some issues happening in our community. And we have to ask that Harambe question, how are the children? I just said, based upon that data, the children are not doing well. But here's an invitation to stir up our faith, stir up our commitment, and bring hope to our children. And why is literacy a powerful way to do that? I grew up, we didn't have money, but I had books, I had faith, I had family, and that was the only currency I needed. I traveled the world through books. I've now lived and worked throughout Asia, Africa, Europe. That's because it started with books. I could imagine where I would go. I climbed the Great Wall of China before I even made it to China. I knew about what I wanted to see in South Africa, Tanzania, Ghana, Sierra Leone. I wanted to see the beaches of Sierra Leone. I went last year. That started with books. So I believe that literacy is a tool that we need in our community, but it has to be treated like a precious commodity, but also a currency. And I'm going to focus on the currency part first. The currency that oftentimes a lot of children don't have ambition for the future. And people are like, well, not my child. I didn't say your child. I said a lot of our children do not have ambition for the future. Well, here's the piece. We have to expand beyond my child and your child to our child. And that's that Harambe question. How are the children? So how do I support the children? I'll just lay out all the cards. I've been in schools and children are like, I'm dropping out. Now, I heard at a high school level, but I had to call out all the administrators when I heard a third grader tell me that. Dropping out to do what? And they also had, and I noticed based upon the data, especially after COVID, we had third, second, fourth graders never accounted for again in the school system. No one's looking for them. No one's enforcing these truancy laws. So here's our chance as a community to say, if the system's not working, let us build our own systems. Let us build our own systems of compassion, of empathy, of love for our people, and build our own blueprint for our own liberation. And I believe it starts with the mind. And the mind is fertile ground and nourished through reading and literacy.
Mm, mm. Oh my goodness. You're bringing it, Dr. Tyner. I mean, these are the types of conversations that I have with folks. We just having our, what you want to call parking lot conversations, whatever, you know what I'm saying? But we just talking amongst ourselves, having that governance structure conversations. But these things right here have to be spoken out loud. This is something that literally everybody needs to hear and understand that, look, we have a real issue. These are the facts. And now what we need to do is figure out these solutions. And the solutions that you're giving, though, they sound so simple, right? But the thing is that a lot of our folks, they struggle with connecting with that. Just like you said, in terms of the connection you have with your mother, your grandmother, having that culture. And that's the things that I am trying to get back with our folks, understanding that, look, we don't have to reinvent the wheel. We literally have resources in our own homes, our own communities. So can you tell us, I want to get into, because obviously with all the things you're articulating, and then you said that you became a civil rights attorney. So what was it? Was all of these different things that we're talking about obviously had to have led you into being a civil rights attorney? Can you expound on that, please?
I would say that was destiny meeting just the opportunity and timing. Becoming a civil rights attorney was really what I was born to do. There's no doubt on that. Coming from Rondo, seeing the injustices that I witnessed, going through the trials and tribulations that I went through, I knew there was something wrong. If the law is a language of power, how is it no one in my community is well versed in it? Yeah, we end up in the orange jumpsuit, but who's on the table being called Esquire, counselor?
Mm.
That has to be us. So yes, I became dedicated to become an attorney. At first, I thought I would start my career as a high school English teacher, but I knew I didn't have time in that moment. There was a sense of urgency. Once I started student teaching and seeing the disparities in the classroom and the challenges, I started student teaching in the kindergarten classroom. Many people believe you can see the disparities by third and fourth grade. You actually see them in early childhood education. When depending on if a child has access to a quality early childhood education experience, that's the difference between building a vocabulary of some words versus millions of words. That's the difference between ensuring that the brain is developed. If 80% of the brain is developed by at least age 3, it tells me that we need to be investing in early childhood education. And I couldn't just say all these issues or just present the data. Sometimes I needed the tools of law and policy to shape the change for not one client, but many. So that's what inspired me to become an attorney, because I knew I had to be well versed in that language of power. And I knew that I had to use my voice to translate that into what my community needed. So that was the journey on becoming a civil rights attorney, and everything else is adjacent to that. Yes, I earned my doctorate, but that's adjacent to who I am as a civil rights attorney. Yes, I earned my master in public policy, but my first identifier, civil rights attorney, understanding that we are born with a sense of human dignity. We are born with purpose. We are born with the right to thrive. And in order to navigate those just general principles of human existence, I had to become a civil rights attorney.
Mm-hmm. I want to ask you a question, though, and I know that you definitely have dealt with this and heard this in particular, obviously, in the Black community. You're talking about our community in which we have economically depressed, when it comes to anything positive, anything that's going to help us thrive, we're low at the bottom, right? So my question is, though, what about those people who have the mindset of, well, the system was designed to do what it's been doing, which is to keep Black people in a position of where we are, so why even participate? For example, when it comes to, even voting, or when it comes to just being in, in the political realm, because of the fact that it seems like it doesn't matter. We hear about, yeah, you vote, you know what I'm saying, you do this, you do that, but then we look up and we still see the same old, of our people totally in a disadvantaged position. Well, what do you say to that?
I would say what one of my Rondo community elders taught me, Mr. Dennis Presley, God bless his soul.
Mm-hmm.
He said, "Got voice, got power." I think it's a question of once you use your voice, you set an agenda. Once you set an agenda, you set strategic action, the metrics behind it, analyzing your progress, and you basically then plan, strategize for change. People would hope that you wouldn't use your voice. They would hope that you don't show up to cast your ballot. They will hope that you don't believe in the future, because then that means that you've given your power away. So for me, life is about power and using power to affect change. So I have no choice but to get up and go to the Capitol and talk to the legislature about the issues I'm passionate about. I have no choice but to show up. And when I don't see the candidates, hey, I help to groom new ones, help to prepare the next generation of candidates. But I believe that God voice, got power. I think the biggest challenge that many of us face, we don't understand our power. I grew up believing, based upon my faith, you have limitless power. So here I am, and can do nothing less than to use that power to create as much change as I can in this season called life. Because I cannot complain if I haven't done the work. And even once I've done the work, I don't have the right to complain, even if I fail. That means I need a different strategy. That's all.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And one of the things too, that when you mentioned before about us creating our own systems, having our own communities, I truly believe, as I'm of the mindset, that we need to get back to that mode of thinking, like how Marcus Garvey, you had that mindset of, hey, look, we need to have our own communities, and we need to make sure we're self-sufficient. We need to make sure that we are connecting with one another. The whole Black Wall Street, all the different, Black towns that was created with that mindset. To me, that I believe, especially now, we definitely need to go inward. You know what I'm saying? So, I definitely want to see us do more of that, within our communities, for sure.
Agreed. And that's where literacy matters again, because you have to have inspiration for that. You have to be able to know that Marcus Garvey wrote a whole constitution, developed a flag to unite us across the African diaspora. Literacy allow us to read and understand who we are. You sometimes feel like you're alone. We're 1.4 billion strong across the African diaspora. Fastest growing population in the world. Innovations happening. The economies are growing throughout 54 countries in Africa. Africa's a continent. All those pieces. That's the power of being able to be literate, being able to be engaged, and more importantly, being able to celebrate our own culture and history. Sometimes we always look at the negativity. Sometimes we always look at what won't work, what could not work. But let's look at the victories that we can celebrate each and every day of how strong the African diaspora truly is.
Yeah, exactly. And to add to that, one of the things that I do talk about when I'm like engaging with young people is about having your passport. There are a lot of our young folks who don't, they're like, okay, no, I don't have a passport, or I don't know, the adults in my family don't have one. Some may even not, don't even know what a passport is. So could you talk to that in terms of just, explaining how important that is for our young people to know about having a passport and being able to be, well traveled?
I can say that I agree. I understand where the young people are coming from. The first time I mentored, Judge LeJune Lane told me I needed a passport. In my back of my mind, was like, I can't even afford to eat today, pay for these law books. I don't think a passport is on my list. Mm-hmm. But the reality of it is, her advice was the best advice I ever could have been given. Because if I look at the trajectory of my career, her telling me that 20 years ago, literally most of my business affairs, everything that I do are global. So had I not had the passport, not had the language skills, so I grew up in a Chinese immersion program. So that gave me the skills and tools to be able to travel throughout China, to be able to navigate language and culture. So literally, when I think about a passport, Malcolm X said it best: education is a passport to the future. Tomorrow belongs to those who prepare for it today. So here it is. Every time you learn something new, every time you engage, that's a new visa you put into your passport, figuratively. But literally, a physical passport is a launch to the future. And here it is, a message for the young people who are tuned in, or the parents. Literally, the passport can open up opportunities to study abroad, to teach abroad. Many of my friends are still teaching in China all these years later. It's also the opportunity to visit the motherland. My goodness, being able to walk where Malcolm X walked, Dr. King walked, Maya Angelou walked, to be able to document their journey, Dr. W.E.B. Du Bois, all those pieces. I came back stronger than I've ever been, because I know undeniably the power of our culture, the power of what we can create, and being able to witness the innovation of what we create. We take nothing and make it into something and make it brilliant. What type of people is that? That's the people that can take an impossible situation. And you know that once you go to the slave castles as an African American, born as a descendant of an institution, I want to use the words very carefully, a political institution, an economic institution called slavery. You go through those slave castles and you see the power and the resilience of our people, you can't help but to get stronger. But you're only going to see that if you have a passport. Because I had to go back, that Sankofa moment, I had to go back and catch my history to understand where I was headed in the future. And that only truly happened once I went to Mama Africa. Once I went back and saw the slave castles in Tanzania and Bagamoyo. Once I went back to Elmina, slave castle, Cape Coast, I didn't understand even who I was until I went back to Africa. And until you had that experience, you won't have clarity of purpose. You'll just exist. And existing is not the same as flourishing or thriving.
Ooh. Oh man, you dropping it. She dropping it, y'all. Oh my goodness. And speaking of power, speaking of understanding our power, I'm looking over your shoulder and I'm seeing the book right there with the little beautiful Black girl with her cape. And I know you're the author of that book because we have gotten books from one of our biggest donors. She had donated copies of your book. So you got kids across the city in Cleveland who got that book on their bookshelves. Okay, so can you please tell us what inspired you to write your book? Give everybody the title again, and yes, tell us the inspiration.
This book is Justice Makes a Difference, the story of Miss Freedom Fighter Esquire. I wrote this book in partnership with my mother, who is an educator, and Miss Jackie, and we really wrote this book to get that inspiration. You can see once the kids look closely, they're like, that's you. You're correct, it's me. The pictures are adapted from my Citizen of the Week pictures from first grade, and also my grandmother. That's literally my grandmother, my grandma Nellie, my maternal grandmother that's featured in the book. And why was this book so important? Two reasons. First, around representation. When I grew up, I never saw a book like Justice Makes a Difference. I never saw myself on the pages of books. Yes, they threw in a Black girl eventually at the Babysitters Club, Sweet Valley High, that sort of thing. But something intentional around Black books that honor Black culture, that honor humanity. And let's be clear, because sometimes people go, oh, well, it's just about Black History Month. No, I'm talking about books for all children, to have those mirrors, that positive representation of yourselves on the pages of books. But Dr. Rudy Sims Bishop said it wasn't just about mirrors, you also needed windows for all students, no matter their color or background, to learn about other cultural experiences and build a bridge together. So Dr. Rudy Sims Bishop, when she defined those mirrors and windows, that was really inspiration as well, that the book should reflect the rich cultural heritage of America, of my cultural background. So nearly 40 books later, here I am still highlighting culture, history. I'm intentional even with names. Even with our books for the leaders or readers, they focus on names. So Aquia means born on Wednesday in Tweet. You also have Kojo, and then you also have Kofi. And then our new book series has Kwame as the main character, because we also wanted names that resonate with culture. Because the other thing, growing up, I never saw Artika. You go to the little shops, you can find all those name things. You'll never find Artika, and that's okay. I'm still here and I still exist. But for children, literally, I can't tell you how many stories children have called or parents have emailed and said that my son Kojo now sees himself represented on the page of books. Even just to say, oh, my daughter, little black girl, now sees herself in the pages of books. So this is the type of change that we've been able to create with our publishing company, with the books that we produce, that we can see ourselves on the pages of books and not just see ourselves, but celebrate our accomplishments as well.
Oh, wow. That is phenomenal. Then you said your publishing company as well. Tell her, and I wanted to highlight that because a lot of times, yeah, it's great that we have Black authors and Black illustrators, but we need to have more Black-owned publishing companies and distributors. Can you please tell us about your publishing company too?
The Black publishing companies are the heart of our literacy initiatives, our cultural heritage, because without them, we cannot continue the work, literally. And I will just tell you the data, you can research it yourself, but you see a large peak on the number of Black books, both authored by African Americans and a main character who is African American, after the murder of Mr. George Floyd. Because oftentimes people said, let's increase diversity as our racial justice initiative. We honor that. But how is it then we fast forward to today, just a few years later, and you don't see that same level of commitment to produce Black books written by Black authors and with topics that celebrate Black history and culture? If we did not have Black publishing houses, you would not have continuity in the sense of continuously producing the books that reflect us and reflect our experiences. But this is where we need you. It's not simply that the Black publishing houses like ours, Planting People Growing Justice, or also Just Us Books, for example. It's not simply that we exist. We also need your help to purchase the books, to demand that they're on the shelves of libraries and bookstores, because we've done our part. Clearly, we produced the books that reflect our culture and history. Now we have to collectively, as a community, do our part to also say, we want these books in our household. We want them in our schools. We want them in our libraries. Because one of the things I saw, just looking at the data a couple of days ago, still seeing pretty steady number of books being produced, but still also seeing a continuous sharp decline of the number of the books that are written by Black authors coming from Black publishing houses that are ever sold in bookstores or sold in major retailers. So it's also time to put a demand to make sure these books are marketed and sold across the nation and globally.
Well, I'm definitely glad that you highlighted that because that is something that I, just learning more about in terms of, especially being in that literacy space, understanding the importance of having those Black publishing companies. In fact, which I know Dr. Greg Carr, he definitely talks about that extensively, how we need that. So thank you for highlighting that point. I know we are coming up close to the end of our conversation, so I want to ask you a couple of more questions if you don't mind. So I would like for you, number one, to give us a few tips, which you have already really, throughout the conversation, but if you can just kind of underscore, just like a few tips for our families that they can implement so they can start to develop that culture of literacy that you were accustomed to being raised in their homes today.
The most immediate one is early childhood education. I mean, when we're expecting and, even when the baby's in the womb, here's our chance to start developing that culture of reading. So there we go. From conception on, there's a culture of reading we need to develop. I will reiterate and continue to be a strong advocate for this, investing in early childhood education in the sense of what are those educational experiences that we are creating for our young people from 0 to 3. We know that the brain is like a sponge. That's a period where it's growing most rapidly, and I'm not the neurologist or anything like that, but all those neurons are moving. Help connect the dots with language, with reading, and with family, just bonding around those pieces as well. So that starts with vocabulary. Those are just casual conversations. I was driving out yesterday to take care of a few things and have my younger cousin with me. Oh, my younger cousin was spelling every street name, every business name. Oh, we were going through, I was like, what's cooperative economics? What's solidarity? I was teaching also cultural principles at the same time. How do you spell that? Every opportunity is a learning experience. I learned my basics of math. Mother would have me at the table counting the black-eyed peas. So I would say that early childhood education and this idea that learning happens beyond the classroom. I'm still disheartened every time I have someone say, well, the teacher will figure that out. You are the child's first teacher. That's why we launched the first educator campaign. And you can follow us on social media, and you can follow and link to our newsletter. We do a monthly article on key strategies around literacy for the family. So that's another tool. First educator. Claim that for yourself. Do not give that power to the teachers and the school. I'm not saying that as a form of disrespect. I'm saying it because you're collaborators, but you don't give that power to somebody else. The first educator I ever had was my mother, hands down. Mother carried me all the way to a doctoral program and beyond, and still yet today. So why do I say that? Because we give that power away too easily. We'll say, oh, that's the responsibility of schools. Oh, no. Schools for me were like extracurricular activities. Mother already had her curriculum set at our home. And then school was pro-social and other things. But I want us to think about how do we serve as first educators and set our own agenda, starting from the womb and beyond. I also want us to build our own family library. Still yet today, 60% of low-income families don't have one book in their home. But I guarantee when you go into their home, they got a tablet. I guarantee they have some video games. But let's guarantee that we have some physical books. And it's not just people say, well, we got books on the tablet. No. There's a difference between a book on a tablet and a physical book. It connects related to the diversity of learning, the auditory piece, and it also connects to the visual learning as well. There's more to just pages on the books. It's an interactive experience that you cannot do with an ebook. An ebook is supplementary, please don't get me wrong, but there's something to be said, and this is science and research, on the power of picking up a physical book and engaging on that experience. You got all the five senses going on that experience. And in addition to building that library and early childhood education, I want us to build vocabulary. And when I talk about building vocabulary, do your own spelling bee at home. That's okay. Think about the principles that you need. Literally, when I was giving that example of my little cousin yesterday, I was like, you spell the word, and then I also want you to give me the definition. So I was building and strengthening vocabulary, increasing knowledge, increasing reading comprehension. I was doing multiple things at once. So vocabulary is key. So I want us to also think very strategically on how do you build vocabulary. I'll just give you a personal example for me. Going to law school, most of the principles are in Latin. I didn't grow up learning Latin. Most of my colleagues did. I grew up studying Chinese and knowing, okay, grew up English in my home. I get it. But then it meant that I had to build a whole new vocabulary. So literally, I pulled out the old school index cards and I started building the vocabulary in Latin so I could understand the roots of the words that I was learning in law school as well. Vocabulary matters.
Oh, wow. That, woo! Like I tell my listeners all the time, when you're listening to Real Reading Talk, make sure you have your notebook and your pen. That's what, when you see me, when I'm looking down, I'm taking all the, even though I can go back and listen and take notes. That's what I do because, again, this helps me to retain this information. I get giddy, excited, and that's what I want for our listeners. I want them to understand that, listen, when I bring folks on here, it's about empowerment. This is about us getting out of this mode of survival. We need to be thriving. And right here, everything that Dr. Tyner is talking about is building that foundation of us beginning to thrive. And we definitely have to have highly literate society in order to be able to do that. So in closing, what I would love for you to do is to tell us what I'm quite sure it's books for you, plural, are you currently reading?
Yes, the one that's top on my bookshelf right now, and this is my second time reading it, The Mathematics of the Mind by Brother Nure Muhammad. Changed my life. When I think about the idea of the discipline and the process of thinking and how to organize my time, how to set out a clear strategy and vision. Brother Nure Muhammad clearly gives a pathway on how the mind is a powerful tool, but how do we activate it to reach our destiny? So it's clearly it's my best read for 2024. It's on my nightstands. I'm gonna start it all over again and really think about how I implement it in 2025. How do I master my mind? Because clearly there are so many issues around us, so many challenges, opportunities, but the discipline of the mind, the discipline of faith, the discipline of purpose, those have to be top priorities. And I really believe his book gives a blueprint for that.
Hmm. Oh, wow. Well, I wrote that title down, and I definitely heard of Brother Nuri Muhammad. And that right there is a book that I'm going to make sure that I get again so that our communities can be able to have these books on their bookshelves. Let me ask you in closing again, what is your doctorate degree in, by the way?
Yes, I earned a doctorate in educational leadership. So my dissertation focused on what are the leadership skills needed to build and sustain social change. So really it was the next level of my work. As a civil rights attorney, yes, there's mass litigation. Yes, you can get into the courtroom, but it's something bigger that I needed. A clear
Mhm.
sense on how do I mobilize the masses around change, like the way we're talking about literacy and the way that your work in Cleveland connects to our work here in Rondo. Really, how do we mobilize change? And the dissertation opened my eyes. I met with some of the top, most prominent lawyers in the nation. And I realized that they didn't have just one tool in the toolbox going to the courthouse or litigating. They realized that power was with the people. And how do you mobilize people to create change in their day to day lives?
Mm. Oh, wow. Well, I appreciate you definitely driving that home. Power is with the people. This is something that, again, a mantra that, we definitely have heard. I remember, in the 60s, our folks, power to the people, right? Understanding that we have that power. We just got to get back to understanding that we have that power. And that's really what, the intent, again, just driving home with Real Reading Talk, with what we're doing with ABC Read. So I definitely appreciate you tremendously. If you can tell everybody, number one, where they can find you, where they can purchase your books. And also, I know you mentioned in terms of your publishing company, if you can, tell everybody like how to be able to help with that in any way. So go right ahead, please.
Yes. Once again, you can find me literally my name, artikatyner.com, ARTIKATYNER.com. You can find information about our nonprofit, which is really a part of a larger social enterprise. That's our publishing house, our bookstore, and our nonprofit literacy organization. You can find that at Planting People Growing Justice Leadership Institute.org. So ppgjli.org. For those of you who are interested and passionate, I've told a little bit about my story and journey as an author. Please reach out. You can reach out to us if you have a manuscript in hand. You can submit it to us for consideration of publication. But also, I want you to know that it is a labor of love. Literally, I had to search out for resources to start writing. Everything that I had to search for, I made available free of charge. If you go to our YouTube channel, you can find everything about publishing, how to write and format your manuscript, how to find an agent if you want to go through traditional publishing, how to self-publish, how to conduct research, how to write poetry, everything that you could think of. Literally a full university of writing is available on our YouTube channel, available free of charge to you. The only thing that I ask, once you master it, help somebody else. That's my only ask, but all the resources are available to you free of charge on our YouTube channel.
Wow. And what's the YouTube channel name? Is it
The YouTube channel name is our organizational name, Planting People Growing Justice. So
okay?
YouTube, you can find all the workshops, Planting People Growing Justice.
Okay. Okay. Great. And I'll make sure that all of that information is going to be in the description anyway, so people will be able to click links as well. So this conversation was truly blessed. We appreciate you, your just commitment to justice, commitment to Black people being empowered, in particular through literacy. And we thank you tremendously once again for gracing your presence on Real Reading Talk. Dr. Tyner, thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Yes, indeed. And once again, you guys, I appreciate you all listening to another episode of Real Reading Talk. Again, my name is Ms. Sation. With Real Reading Talk, I discuss the real systemic issues that at the very core, the very foundation as to why we have these high levels of illiteracy in the Black community and the ways in which we can combat these issues together. Thank you all for listening. Once again, thank you to my guest, Dr. Tyner, and you all take care. And remember, reading is freedom. Peace. You already know what it is, y'all. Once again, I make sure to have guests on here that is going to bring it, okay? You hear me? And I hope you all had your notebooks and pens. And of course, you can always go and rewind, okay? So you guys can go back and get those nuggets that were being dropped by Dr. Tyner. And some housekeeping once again, if you are looking for a reading tutor for your pre-K through 4th grade baby, please go to my website, abclearntutoring.com, and click on that free reading assessment today. Also, I am the founder and executive director of ABC.read. Yes, started 10 years ago, y'all. We've given away close to 7,500 books and counting. And so for those of you who want to help us continue on our mission of developing and nurturing a culture of literacy in Black and underserved communities here in Cleveland, please go to our website, abcread.org. All right. And pick up your merch, y'all. I created the brand Reading is Freedom. Okay. Reading is definitely a liberatory act. It is a way for us to be able to thrive. And this is something that we should always be doing, okay? Just because you know how to read, you should make sure that you are also reading every single day, all right? At least for 30 minutes. And make sure you subscribe to my YouTube channel, Reading is Freedom, as well. And also the book that I have been reading is Rest is Resistance by Tricia Hersey. All right, so that's the book actually we intend on reading for our second book club for ABC Read. All right, so that's the book that I have been reading myself. And I definitely, once again, appreciate everybody for listening to another episode of Real Reading Talk. And I'm going to leave you all with this quote. Remember, reading is not optional. All right. Walter Dean Myers, reading is not optional. Okay. So with that being said, thank you all again for listening. My name is Ms. Sation. This has been another episode of Real Reading Talk. Make sure that you are reading for at least 30 minutes a day. And remember, reading is freedom.